Have you ever wished you could walk up to your race car and do this with your doors? Do you guys have a race car that you wish you could easily remove your doors? Today we're going to show you how to do that without any tools. Welcome back, everyone. This is Joe at Forge, where I share my passion for creating, building, and racing high-performance vehicles. On this channel, I do a lot of how-to guides on custom fabrication, product reviews from the vendors that support our builds, as well as toss in some behind-the-scenes vlogs to show you guys what goes on here at Forge Performance. So if you're new here, thanks for stopping by. And if this is the type of content that you are interested in, please consider subscribing. Now let's get on to the video. Welcome back, everybody. Joe with Forge with another product review. This one is a little bit more race car this time. This is something that I've been wanting to put on to the shop drag car here for quite some time and really haven't had an opportunity to do so. So if you guys have ever tried to get in and out of your race car or even your daily driver car that you trailer in an enclosed trailer, it's almost impossible to get out of the car with a roll cage installed, let alone a full-on, SFI funny car roll cage like what's in here. So we have to take the door off every single time we get in and out of this car. And the way we've been doing it is with the factory door hinges. We have to bring tools and you unbolt it from the single point here, and then you gotta unbolt the little catch mechanism so it doesn't overextend. And then we're carrying the door in and out of the trailer and having to pack it away. And it's a little bit of a pain in the butt. So our friends at Shop Houston have come up with a solution, which is a billet door hinge that has a pivoting mount that just slides up and off. And that way you could use this to remove your doors quickly to get in and out of the car. A lot of times we won't put the door back on when we move the car around because we've had problems with just getting it lined up, and it takes two people. Well, this makes it a one-man job, and it doesn't require any tools. So that's what we're going to go over today. A little bit of the installation procedure. It's not as easy as an install as you might think. This is kind of a little bit more for a pro job, but if you have the right tools and you're patient, you'll be able to get these things installed. So we're going to go over the process on the passenger side door, since we've already kind of tested this whole thing out on the driver door to make sure we're doing it right and we don't have to do a bunch of retakes. And we learned a few lessons, so we're going to share that with you today. All right, so now that the door is off, you can see you have the lower hinge there and the upper hinge. And then this is where the catch, it's got the two catches on it so you don't open the door too far. Now there's a couple different ways to get these hinges off the body. We're kind of cheating it a little bit. We already have the front bumper off and we don't have the fender liners in. So we're just gonna remove the fender bolts that you can see here in the door. And then we're gonna pop the lower skirt off, and we'll reach around in there and just loosen the fender away from the body so we can get the hinges out of the way. So you're gonna have these two here, and then you're gonna have the one up by the hood. The rest of these you don't really need to remove. We can pull the fender away from the body enough with just these three. Now I need to lift the car up and we'll get the ones below. All right, so in order to get these three bolts that are holding the lower part of the fender on, we need to pop the side skirt off. So there's a little trim clip that right in the fender there, and if you are running fender liners in the rear, you will need to remove them to do this. And then on the bottom side of the car here, there's a bunch of little screws that hold your side skirt on. Now this is going to be the same whether you have aftermarket side skirts or not, but you're just going to pull all these screws to about midway down the door. And we'll just go back here one more just to make sure we don't stress anything out when we pull the side skirt away. All right, now that the side skirt is loosened up, it's just a bunch of pop tabs. You just got to be careful when you're pulling them on there, or you will damage your side skirt. There you go. See, that's loosened up, and now I have access to the 3 bolts that hold the lower part of the fender on. Behind here, there's some foam sealant, and you can kind of see on the camera there that that's what's holding this fender against the body. And you just have to be real careful and kind of break that seal away. And this would be the case if you're putting aftermarket fenders on your car as well. You know, all this is kind of sealed on there. But that's about as far as I need to be able to get this. I just need to be able to get this bolt that's tucked in behind the fender with my tools so I can get the hinges off. So in order to get these off, I like using one of these long extended ratcheting wrenches. It's probably one of the most used wrenches in my toolbox, but you can get in here and I don't have to lift the fender off very far at all. And then I can just break these free. And then this top hinge is actually pinned into the door. You see that little extra pin there. And that helps us later in the installation process, but I noticed on mine, this thing's never been driven in the winter. Pretty much a garage queen. It goes down the racetrack, but they're kind of seized up on there. So you just got to be a little bit careful. And I'll probably use my trim tool here just to help it off of the body. Or not. Well, let's try a brass hammer. Oop. As you see, just a little bit of corrosion on these things when you take them off. But nothing the trusty old brass hammer can't fix, doesn't mar up the finish at all. And I don't really care, I'm not putting these back on. So, top pro tip of the day. Now, we just gotta take off the lowers, which are a lot easier. And that one comes off a lot easier. As you can see, there's not a locating pin in this one like there is on the top. So now that we have the factory hinges off, we're going to install the Chop Houston billet door hinges. Now these things are pretty cool. They are all machined out of billet. They have a titanium replaceable pin that if something were ever happen to the pin or get marred up or whatever, you could replace it. And they slip on pretty well. So this, we found out there is a trick to getting these installed. So they all have a top and a bottom. And these install on the car pretty much straight away. Now the one trick that you're gonna see on the bottom is when the hinge comes back in, this is relief cut right here for the bolt to pass through. Now on the factory doors, we had to relieve this just a little bit more. I have a feeling that when you're installing a carbon door, this is a lot less of an issue, but just keep that in mind. You might have to get in here with a file or a rotary sander and just kind of taper that in just a little bit more so the door closes smoothly. So we'll install these on the body with the provided titanium bolts in the kit, and then we'll move on to hanging the door. Okay, so because this is pinned to the door, and it is a tight fit, that's a good thing because you want this to basically assist you in locating the height and depth of the door. Since there is a little bit of corrosion on here, I'm just taking a little bit of Scotch-Brite pad that we use here to clean up a lot of gaskets and just knock some of this corrosion off of that pin so it'll slide on there a little bit easier. Like I said, it doesn't take much. Now, I'm not trying to, fully clean the thing. I'm just trying to make this slide right on. So in the kit, they provide titanium hardware. And then for the body, these 13 millimeters, I mean, pretty lightweight. And then we're just gonna put that over the pin and screw it in. And then I also need to lift the fender up and get this backside in. And this one, you just kind of sneak it in there. Okay, and I'm not going to snug those up, and you'll see why here in a minute. So next we move to the bottom one. That's really straightforward. There's no pins or anything to hold it in there, so you just push the foam out of the way and fit the lower hinge in there. There is a top and a bottom for this. And you'll see on there when we go to the car. Now on the factory door, and I suspect this probably is not the case on aftermarket carbon fiber doors, you have to relief the back side of this just a little bit so it'll fit around this pin on the door. Now hopefully the camera will pick that up. It's got a little step to it. So if you happen to install this on a factory door, you have to relief the backside of this just a little bit, and I just used our drill press to expand that hole out just a little bit so it'll slip over that and sit flush on the car. But we found the trick is put these on the car first and then walk the door back over and hang the door on the car, and then we can line everything up. We were trying to do it with these bolted onto the car, even loosely. It was almost impossible to get it on there and lined up. So that's how we're gonna do it on this one. So we're gonna walk over here. And you'll see kind of how this functions. So this is the bottom one that slips on the hinge there. And you'll see as it rolls in, as you close the door, there's a stop right here. So I can't lift this off when the door is closed. So that's kind of a nice little security feature. So I have to open the door past that point before I can even think about lifting it off. So that's the bottom. And then the top only goes one way, which I'm showing you the wrong way. That goes facing up. So the bottom one faces down, the top one faces up, and you'll see this kind of closes against the hinge. And you can see here, I'm a little bit crooked, so I'm gonna grab my pliers. So I can adjust this so it's a level, to what I think is level. And we'll do the same on the bottom. And then this will be the last time I need some help hanging this door. I'm gonna have Emilio help me line everything up, and we'll get the bolts in the door. And we'll show you the next step. So the kit comes with this really nice titanium hardware. Titanium washer, titanium lock nut. But on the factory door, I wasn't able to use these. I'm sure these work totally fine on an aftermarket carbon door. So we had to switch to just a lower profile nut. You can see there. And that helps fully engage the threads on the studs on the door, and also will help clear the door hinges. So that's the one other thing we had to do to change to make this work on our factory doors. All right, so this is the tool that I use to clearance the other side. I have to do a little bit more on this side as well. I mean, any rotary disc or a belt sanding apparatus, even a file would get the job done. We don't need to take a lot out. And I'm just profiling. It already was profiled here a little bit, but I need to come in here with the sanding tool and just relieve it just a little bit more. All right, that should do it. All right, get this top hinge Sorry guys, I can't really show you what's going on here, but
I'm blind.
see what we're dealing with. Now this bottom hinge is the one that's a little bit tricky. And I'll go ahead and tell you, this part of the job is basically impossible with one person. You are going to need some help. Again, I'm not trying to tighten these down fully, just snugging them up so I can move them around. Now that we have the door hung, next step is to close the door and see if it actually closes on the car. So I'll have Emilio close the door. Because I'm still running these door catches, I do need to install this, and this does help because that allows us to locate the door and make sure it's kind of at the right height and everything. So we'll add that in there. And this is one of those deals where we can just essentially make it finger tight. Now we can close the door and just be real careful about it. And Emilio's gonna watch the front edge to make sure it's not gonna catch on the fender at all. And kind of put the fender back where it belongs. Just loosely let it rest there. So as you can see, the door's right now just sitting a little bit low. So we need to adjust for that. And that's why we left everything loose, so we can pop everything up into place. All right guys, so Emilio is gonna kind of help me do this part so I can show you guys what we're doing. So you can see with the fender pulled away from the body, you can see the hinge system and everything in there. And let's just walk around to this side. And you can see you have full access to both nuts, or bolts rather. Those are 13mm titanium supplied with the kit. A little bit hard to see what he's doing in there, but you get the idea. So we'll snug the bottoms up, and then we'll reach around to the top and snug those up. And then we can kind of put the fender back down in place and open the door, and we'll snug the hinge side, the bolts to the door. And there'll just be one last step to make sure everything lines up perfectly. As you can see here, I have a quick release system with quarter turn fasteners on the car. And in order to take the fender off, I'd have to take this whole system off. And I really didn't feel like doing that, to be honest. So we figured we could just pull the fender away from the car just enough, and it worked out in our case. Now you do have to make sure you pull the fender liner in the side skirt, and you would have to do that anyway, even if you were going to remove the fender itself. But that was the main reason why we didn't do it on the race cars, because of this contraption that's part of our quarter turn quick release for the front bumper. All right guys, so now that we have the hinges behind the fender tight, now I can open the door and close it every single time it doesn't move. So I know everything's in alignment, so now all I have to do is snug up the hinges on the door side. In order to do that, we just open the door about as far as it'll go. And I'm going to take my 13mm box end wrench and tighten the hinges as much as I possibly can with it on the car so they don't move on me when I lift the door up off. Now we should be able to just lift the door up off of the hinges. One-man job. Now I'm going to show you one more trick to make sure this stuff doesn't move on you when you go to do this multiple times in a row. Door back over on the stand here. And I tightened them as much as I could on the car, but I want to snug these up a little bit more on the stand here. Now I don't want to snug them up to the point where, so I got that one pretty good. Make sure the bottom one is tight. Able to get just a little bit more on that. So what I'm going to do, because these only are held in by that single stud. Now there is that locating portion of the pin on the factory door that we had to make clearance for.
But I also want to add a locating rivet. So I'm going to drill a 1/8 inch hole right here, and I'm going to do another one over here that allows the pin to stay located, the hinge portion to stay located. Because if this were to loosen up a little bit over time, you don't want it to become misaligned while you're trying to put the door on. So that's just a little bit of forethought. You know, these are race cars, you're vibrating around and you're lifting it off, taking it off a bunch of times. That could eventually loosen up, even though there's a locking nut on the back side of this. So that's just our solution for this. I think it would probably be a good idea to even do this on your carbon doors if you have a set of carbon doors as well. So all I'm gonna do is take my drill, and I use just these stubby bits that I like to use so they're not too long. And really, there's no science to this. You just kind of put it where you think it makes sense. And then I want to be able to hold the door. And you could use a center punch on this if you needed to, but really not necessary. And I'm just going to drill all the way through until I punch through the other side on the door. All right. So because this is so thick, I have to also run a little bit of a countersink. So I use a 1/4 inch drill bit. I'm just gonna countersink that in, I don't know, about 1/3 of the way down. Again, this is not like you gotta measure this thing and make it perfect. So as you can see there now, the head of the rivet will sit down in there, so it's not going to impede on anything that the hinge is trying to do, and it's enough depth for the rivet to grab onto. I have these extended reach aluminum rivets. You put that in there, you can see how the head of the rivet just sinks down in there. And then I'll stick the rivet gun down in there. And there you go. I'm going to do the same thing on the top side, but that allows this to stay located. So now I have 2 points for this hinge to stay located. And if I ever had to remove these, that's simple. Just drill the head of the rivet out with a 1/8 inch drill bit, and you'll be able to remove it straight away. I went ahead and drilled this hole as well and countersunk that rivet. You can see there, it's right below the surface. So that way when the door closes, these rivets aren't going to be in the way. And then I also just put one more snug on these nuts to make sure that everything is locked in. So if we did everything right, I should be able to walk this door over to the car and just slip it right on. So let's see how we did. And someday, YouTube will make me enough money to buy carbon fiber doors.
Houston, we have a problem.
Well, needless to say, I think we didn't get it the first time. Back off with the door. All right, when I was putting that on there, I could see that I need to clearance that hinge just a little bit more. I thought I had it enough, but you can see where the bolt is trying to hit that. Let's clearance that just a little bit more. We'll blow the little dust out the way. And we'll try take 2.
Damn it, Bobby, this just ain't right.
All All right, guys, so I had a little bit of a problem getting the door to line up. I had to actually drill out the backside of that bracket just a little bit further. It wasn't sitting flush on the door, and that's why I kept struggling to walk it over here and just drop it on. So eventually, let's go for take 3. Did a little bit of work off camera just so we don't make this video, you know, an hour long. So I went ahead and already put all of the bolts back in the fender. So all the fender, everything's back where it's supposed to be. So let's see if I can just drop the door right on like it's supposed to work in the first place. And there you have it. Hooray! Drops right in. Sorry guys, as you can see, we had a little bit of a struggle getting the door on this side. We learned some lessons from the other side, but had to just tweak a few things on the passenger side to get it to all line up. And that's just kind of comes with putting on custom parts like this. These parts from Shop Houston fit really well. I think they're originally intended to go on a aftermarket carbon fiber door. We're still using steel doors on this car because I haven't saved up the money for the expensive lightweight carbon doors, but I'm sure once we switch to those, we'll be able to use all the hardware supplied in the kit, and it'll be just as easy to get these on because we've already got them lined up on the car. So if you want to learn more, we'll have the product link in the description below. And you can always email us at sales@Forge Performance or call us here at the shop, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have about these door hinges or any other track-related items for your GTR. Until the next time, we'll see you on the next video.